All right, Richard, welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Goodfellas, where we talk about the top 30 running backs for Week 7. But before we get started, can we just do a little recap of how we did on Week 6?
Absolutely. We had 2 running backs in our top 30 that didn't play. At number 21, we had Melvin Gordon. And at number 27, we had Le'Veon Bell. Obviously, we did our rankings very early, before Bell was released and before we knew Gordon wasn't playing. But of the remaining 28 players, we got 23 right. Boom, boom, boom. Solid week. And then, even further, if you take our top 16 players, 10 of those top 16 were in the real top 16. So that was excellent. And then our top running back, Derrick Henry, who was the top running back in fantasy. So we had a very good week as far as running backs. And actually, we've been rolling the last few weeks with running backs.
I'm eating. All right, well, let's get started for this week with the top 30 running backs for Week 7. The Fantasy Goodfellas.
Boom, boom, boom.
Rolling on the field.
The Fantasy Goodfellas.
At number 1, we have Alvin Kamara, who will be home against Carolina. Kamara's had a great season. The Saints get Michael Thomas back, but they'll still lean on Kamara. He looks healthy, which is the most important thing. He's number 1 this week. And number 2, Aaron Jones, who will be at Houston. He just finished having a pretty average week. What do you say, Ryan, about Aaron Jones?
Yeah, he had an average week. I think a lot of fantasy owners were a little bit disappointed with that whole Green Bay offense. But I think they're going to get right back on track. They're going against Houston Texans that are ranked 32nd against the run. He's going to have a strong week.
And number 3, we have Kareem Hunt, who has a good matchup against Cincinnati. Hunt also had a down week, but that's more to do with Baker Mayfield not being able to keep up with Ben Roethlisberger. And number 4, we have Derrick Henry. The King will be home against Pittsburgh. Tough matchup, but it's Derrick Henry. Has to be in our top 5. And number 5, we have Ezekiel Elliott at Washington. A rough week this week. Ryan, is Ezekiel Elliott's value dropping?
Definitely not dropping. He has 413 rushing yards so far this season. Has 5 TDs, and ever since Dak Prescott went down, they're going to need to rely on him more and more.
You think? I think his value takes a little bit of a hit. Yeah, they miss Prescott. And, well, again, they're going to lean on Elliott, which bodes well for him. The offense as a whole is going to suffer. And we saw it last week against Arizona. We'll see if that was just an anomaly. Number 6, James Conner at Tennessee. Pittsburgh is relying on that run a lot. And, of course, you have to fear Big Ben. So Connor's in a great position. At number 7, we have Mike Davis at New Orleans. The issue with Mike Davis is, when is Christian McCaffrey returning? I don't think it will be this week. Hence, we have Mike Davis in our top 10. But obviously, if McCaffrey returns, Mike Davis plummet into fantasy oblivion. You know, he might be used here and there, but Christian McCaffrey is the man. So when he comes back, he'll be the man. At number 8, Ronald Jones at Las Vegas. Ryan, what do you have to say about Ronald Jones?
Hey, he just looks good. This is an interesting matchup. He's been running all over everybody, and he's going against that Las Vegas Raiders. I'm looking forward to this matchup a lot. I'm curious to see how he does.
He could end up being a fantasy first-rounder if he keeps this up. And number 9, Joe Mixon, home against Cleveland. We like the matchup. A lot of teams have been running against the Browns. That Bengal offense has been hit or miss, but we're putting Mixon in our top 10. And then at number 10, making his debut in the top 10, DeAndre Swift, who has a great matchup at Atlanta. Detroit, Matt Patricia's finally said, hey, you know, I might lose my job here. Let's give it to the rookie. Let's see what he can do. And so far, it's been magical. So we're going to put him at number 10. At 11, Chris Carson, who will be at Arizona. Again, that Seattle offense is strong. Carson is their bull. Decent matchup. At number 12, Todd Gurley, home against Detroit. Gurley had been on a run where he had been scoring touchdowns and earning a lot of fantasy points. And then this week he kind of had a dud, but we expect him to rebound against Detroit. At number 13, David Johnson, home against Green Bay. David Johnson, while Houston doesn't rely on him as much, he is their number one back, and that offense is actually rolling. They're doing good. Deshaun Watson is playing well, and they're gonna score a lot of points every week because they're gonna have to score a lot of points every week. At number 14, we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who will be at Denver, and I think this is a guy whose fantasy value is dropping.
This week's fantasy player stock is falling.
And it's not his fault. Ryan?
Clyde Edwards-Helaire had his best game of the season, tacking on 161 yards. Although he didn't get into the end zone, he still had his best game, definitely for yardage, running the ball, not even receiving it that much. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be interesting. Although the coach said he's not going to put Le'Veon Bell as the starter, so we're still looking at Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be the starter, but they're going to have to give him some reps. Is it this week they're going to give Le'Veon Bell some reps to kind of see how he does? Is it next week? They're going to have to share the ball at some time, and that's going to take a hit from him a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Especially if Le'Veon Bell becomes their goal line guy, Edwards-Helaire is going to take a big fantasy hit. At number 15, Kenyan Drake, home against Seattle. This week, he got plenty of carries, and we saw what he can do when he gets the touches. He is a very good athlete. Kenyan Drake, we have him in our top 15 this week. Number 16, Josh Jacobs, home against Tampa Bay. It's time to fear those Bucks. Wow. What do you have to say, Ryan?
Oh, Josh Jacobs? Yes, he's going against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, number one against the rush. How is he going to get those points, those fantasy points that we all need him to get? I don't think it's going to be this week. I don't think he's going to get a lot of yards. He might get into the end zone, but...
17, James Robinson at the LA Chargers. And James Robinson, here's another guy whose fantasy value is taking a little bit of a dive.
This week's fantasy player stock is falling.
He was the fantasy pickup darling early in the season. James Robinson, everybody expected big things. Even in losses, he was doing great, receiving the ball, rushing. But now he's put up back-to-back stinkers. And now when you look at his stats for the entire season, it's starting to seem like he was a flash in the pan. At 18, we have Melvin Gordon, home against Kansas City. He missed last game. We know Melvin Gordon can be explosive. He does it all. And then Denver's showing, they're better, and they're going to need a major offensive output to keep up with Kansas City. But the question mark there is Phillip Lindsay. How is that timeshare going to go? At number 19, Jerick McKinnon at New England. We may have jinxed Raheem Mostert with how excited we were about him last week. He gets hurt. Hopefully he's only going to miss a few weeks. He'll definitely miss this week. Hence, we got Jerick McKinnon at number 19. At number 20, Justin Jackson, home against Jacksonville. I believe Justin Jackson is going to be the guy in the Chargers' backfield over Joshua Kelly. Last game, he had more carries, had more receptions. So we're going to put him at number 20 in this great matchup against Jackson. At number 21, we have Antonio Gibson, who'll be home against Dallas. So Gibson is Washington's running back. Then they have a good matchup against a very weak Dallas defense that everybody's running all over and passing. At number 22, Devin Singletary at the Jets. Singletary came off a horrible game, but we still think he's going to be the guy, even though Zach Moss is going to take some carries, and he's got a good matchup. At number 23, Darrell Henderson, home against Chicago. Now we know Henderson is the Rams guy. Chicago, tough matchup. But because of the touches, we're going to keep him at 23. At 24, Devonta Freeman at Philadelphia. Freeman has had nearly 20 carries 2 weeks in a row. Not doing much with those carries. Scored a touchdown, but hasn't looked like, the old Devonta Freeman. But we still, because of the touches, he's number 24. Number 25, David Montgomery at the Rams. Montgomery, he's getting his touches. We want him to score touchdowns. That Chicago Bears offense looks very dysfunctional, but Montgomery's the number 1 guy. Number 26, Phillip Lindsay, home against Kansas City. Good matchup for him. He had over 100. He's coming off a 100-yard game rushing. But now Melvin Gordon looks like he's going to be the guy for Denver. And we'll see how the splits go, but we're still putting Lindsay in the top 30.
2 Denver running backs in the top 30?
I think both Gordon and Lindsay, they're both good running backs. And I expect this timeshare to be more like 60-40, favoring Gordon. But Lindsay showed last week that, with a handful of touches, 5 to 10 touches, he can still do some damage. And he's still a good back. At number 27, we have Le'Veon Bell at Denver. We still don't know what kind of workload Le'Veon's going to get. But I think, this week, obviously, it's going to increase every week. But I still think he's going to get a good amount of touches. It's going to hurt Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And Le'Veon Bell has the potential to be a very good back if he starts playing a major role in this offense. And number 28, Damien Harris, home against San Francisco. The Patriots' backfield is a mess. Right now, we think Damien Harris is the guy they want to lean on. At 29, Latavius Murray, home against Carolina. We know that New Orleans likes that balance on offense. They've been running a lot. Kamara, is normally their pass catcher. And when they get in close, they like to give it to Murray. So I'm going to put him at number 29. And at number 30, old man Adrian Peterson. Good matchup at Atlanta. I know we already have DeAndre Swift on our list, but Peterson still can expect maybe 10 touches. And that should be enough, maybe a touchdown. So we're going to put him at 30.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on here and giving us your top 30 running backs for week 7. Anything you want to add before we take off and set our lineups?
No. I think that's it.
All right.
We've been doing well. Hopefully we can continue the trend.
All right. Well, we thank you coming on here and sharing your top 30 running backs and answering questions in the comment section of this video. Thanks.
No problem. My pleasure.